topic of the day. This is our last email, so let's jump right in. This comes to us from our winner of Jeff Goldblum over here from Thor Ragnarok. Matthew from Leeds in the UK says, DC is smashing it with a slew of trailers. If you haven't noticed, DC Fandom was this last weekend, and they just knocked it out of the park with all of their announcements, all of their trailers and everything. It was absolutely incredible. But Matthew goes on to say, where is Marvel? Have they been hit worse by COVID? That is a great question, Matthew. And I have a lot of things to say about this. Pretty much it's one thing, but I will go on a very long rant. Natalie, please bear with me. We ask where where did the MCU go? Okay, so first and foremost, they've already made all of their Phase 4 announcements like a year ago, back when shortly after San Diego Comic-Con, Disney had D23, and at D23 they announced their next slate of DC movies. DC movies. Can you imagine Marvel making a Batman movie? That'd be kind of cool. But yeah, Disney made their huge slate announcement. And keep in mind, this was only a year ago, only a few months after Avengers Endgame hit theaters. And so here is their slate. They announced the Black Widow movie. No, if you remember, a year ago, right after Avengers Endgame came out, there was no announcement. We knew that, Spider-Man Far From Home was coming out, but that was it. After Spider-Man Far From Home, nobody knew what Marvel was going to do. I mean, there was some rumors and stuff like that, but there were no official announcements. So to go on the Phase 4 announcements, they officially announced all at once Black Widow, the movie, Falcon and Winter Soldier TV show, The Eternals movie, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings movie, WandaVision TV show, Doctor Strange movie, Loki TV show, What If TV show, Hawkeye TV show, Thor Love and Thunder movie, and a Blade movie. That's 11 projects that they straight up announced. Like, these are in development. And then Kevin Feige went on to say, we don't have time to talk about Fantastic Four. We don't have time to talk about Black Panther 2. We don't have time to talk about Mutants or Captain Marvel 2. So he just he name dropped 4 other properties that he's like, we don't have time to talk about these things, because they didn't. They just announced 11 projects. And then he 4 other projects that, everybody knows they're working on. He just casually name dropped. And then, he didn't even mention Guardians of the Galaxy 3, but we know James Gunn has already had the script written. I mean, he's going to have to rewrite it when he comes back to Marvel. But there's that. On top of that, right after D23, I'm going to say it was like a month, 2 months later, very, very close to D23, Marvel went ahead and dropped another little bit of news bomb. They're going to do a Ms. Marvel, a She-Hulk, and a Moon Knight television show, all for Disney+. So now we're up to, so that was 11 officially announced projects. Now we're up to 14 officially announced projects, not to mention the other 5 unofficial projects that he didn't even get around to mentioning. On top of that, we know we're getting a Spider-Man 3, a Marvel version of Spider-Man 3. We know we're getting an Avengers 5. We know we're getting an Ant-Man 3. And with all of the other things coming out, not just coming out, but the things that have come out, all of the young people, all of the children, all of the teenagers that they have seeded in their movies. Ant-Man's daughter, Cassie Lang, Hawkeye's daughter, Kate Bishop, Iron Man 3. There was that kid, I guess they're calling him like the mechanic or something like that. He made an appearance during Tony Stark's funeral. Spoiler alert, Tony Stark died. Where have you been if you hadn't heard that information? What? Tony Stark's dead. The mechanic kid showed up at his funeral. So it is not outside of the realm of possibilities that for years, Marvel has been in the making of a Young Avengers movie. I don't want to say we know this is going to happen, But guys, like the writing is on the wall. All of that stuff, that is 23 projects. 23 projects. DC didn't even announce a fraction of that this last weekend. They announced Batman, they announced Wonder Woman, projects that we already knew were in development. They announced Shazam 2, the Black Adam movie, like all these things. None of this stuff came as a surprise to us. The Suicide Squad, they didn't even have enough to like fill the schedule, and so they put video game trailer. Oh yeah, this is like people are gonna lose their minds over this video game trailer for Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League. Cool. Like, I'm not saying that people shouldn't be excited for it or they can't be excited for it. I'm saying look at all of this stuff that Marvel has been teasing. Hold on, let me turn off some of these things. They have been teasing this stuff. Not just teasing, they've come straight out and announced, this is what we're working on. And this has only been in the past year. So they have 23 projects that they're currently working on. They're in production. They're in pre-production. Some of them are in post-production. Some of the projects were supposed to come out already. So have they been affected by COVID? A little, yeah. I mean, what hasn't been affected by COVID? But whoa, they have got their work cut out for them. They are busy. They don't need to be making any more announcements anytime soon. They have enough on their plate. So, which leads me to the next bullet point. Their projects have all been put on hold. Like, yeah, I mean, obviously, thanks to COVID, projects have been put on hold. Some because of pre-production, some post-production, some main production. All of their plans got pushed back. Bullet point number 3, Marvel and DC aren't in direct competition with each other. Contrary to popular opinion, Marvel and DC aren't, battling for screen time with each other. It actually works so much better if Marvel is successful, it helps DC. And if DC is successful, it helps Marvel because it helps continue to build that genre. Like, if all of the Marvel movies have been bad across the board, A, we wouldn't be getting more Marvel movies, and B, that also hurts DC. If people look at this superhero comic book genre stuff and say, oh, that Iron Man was awful. Oh, those Avengers are so bad. Why did they do that? They're going to look at a Justice League movie and say the same thing. You can't put all of your characters into one film together and make it work. That would be their argument. So if Marvel is successful, DC gets to benefit from it, and vice versa. So they're not in direct competition with each other. I mean, the studios, Warner Brother and Disney, they're, but that's capitalism. Like, competition makes for good work, right? And the last bullet point, fan MCU fatigue, ? We just a year ago finished this Infinity Gauntlet storyline. I guess Natalie, what are they calling it? The Infinity Saga? Is that
the Infinity Saga? Yeah.
So they just finished the Infinity Saga. We have been on this journey with them for quite some time. As a fan, I feel like I need a pause. I feel like I need a little bit of break from the MCU. And that's why I'm excited for a lot of the DC stuff coming out. It's a completely different flavor. It's still superhero. It's still comic book genre and all that stuff. But I kind of need a break. I kind of need some time to push the reset button on my love for Marvel. I will always love the Infinity Saga movies. I will always love them. They're fantastic. Growing up through this whole process of following their journey with them, I never thought that we would get to this point. Nobody did, but here we are, and it's been an incredible journey. Now I need a breather. I need a minute. So the MCU, Marvel, they don't need to be making any grand announcements anytime soon. Natalie, let's kick it over to you. Do you have a different take on this? Do you have a different opinion? Do you share my thoughts? Like where are you at right now?
Well, I actually do share most of your thoughts. I think one really important factor is I believe that the Walt Disney Company hopefully learn some lessons with Star Wars. They definitely overfilled the schedule. They lost the faith of the fans by delivering a couple of things that were very controversial. Now, I will say this with love, Star Wars fans are the worst. They might be the worst. But I think they have a point in expecting, like, okay, how about quality versus quantity? And I thought about this in terms of, the new movies on the slate. They say that Doctor Strange 2 is meant to be more horror movie like, and that's why Sam Raimi seems like a really good fit with that. And the other, like the Eternals, I believe is supposed to be, I mean, I think the ringer there is everybody wants to believe it's like Guardians of the Galaxy, but also there seems to be a pretty strong consensus that it won't be exactly like that. And if that's the case, I'm okay with that. I mean, I think that the Infinity Saga is just perfectly wrapped up. The more I think about it, the more I think of Endgame, the more I think of all the movies that came before. I think that that needs to end a style of film that they've kind of perfected. Now, are they going to drop it immediately? No, I don't think so. But we've talked about this before, you and I, Mike. Like, think about Captain Marvel or even Doctor Strange in comparison to the other Marvel movies that were coming out at that time. Honestly, they felt hollow. They felt like Phase One films to me, and that was kind of disappointing. And I keep seeing the MCU in general as this almost like Harry Potter type evolution that's going to happen. Like the audience is going to grow up and the movies do need to evolve, or they are going to be very cookie cutter. And I think that Walt Disney, more than any company right now, understands the tragedy and the risk of appearing to be like mass produced. Yeah. Nobody wants a mass-produced Star Wars. Nobody wants a mass-produced, Avengers films. And that's actually a big criticism of the MCU, is that it does feel mass-produced. But I think that people have, at least Feige and company, I feel like they've kind of understood that there is a danger of that, and it will, it will tank them financially if they're not careful with it. So, yeah, I mean, it's time for DC to kind of step up. And I know, like, I'm kind of a Marvel person at heart, but I've always liked DC stories. I've always appreciated them. I've been a big Superman and Batman fan for a really long time. And I think that DC has the chops. They have the storylines available, not just in comics, but like in some of their video games even that have come out. I think those are really interesting takes once Warner Brothers breaks away from the mentality of this, we're in competition with Marvel. And I think they did. I think over the last couple of years, they finally came to that realization, is that they can't do the same thing. Now, what is there afterwards is kind of different flavors of, well, I don't know how this fits together, but it feels like it doesn't have to. And somehow it kind of does, or it feels like it does sort of fit together in its own DC way.
Well, to your point earlier, you said something about the fans needing, like, we kind of see the difference between Marvel and DC, and like, oh, DC did this thing. Marvel, what's going to be your response to that? Or Marvel did this thing. DC, what's going to be your response to that? Somewhere in fandom, I don't know where this started, but it's kind of become ingrained in our society and our culture within fandom. We expect Marvel and DC to have a friendly rivalry with each other, and there doesn't need to be a rivalry. It's, you can love completely separate things and let them be themselves. Like even within our own group, for those of you who are not familiar, and I'm sure many of you are not familiar, Natalie and I are part of a cosplay group, and even in our cosplay group, there's this kind of like friendly rivalry of like, oh, are you Marvel or are you DC? And it's just silly. It's just something that we do amongst ourselves. It doesn't mean anything, but there's this idea that exists. Like, are you going to be a Marvel loyalist, as the term has been coined? You're rolling your eyes.
Yeah. you socialist Marvel lover.
Marvel lover.
You brainwashed.
Yeah, you have to pick a side, and you don't have to pick a side. And I think, anytime that one group has success, it will only help and strengthen the other group, or however many other groups that you have. Yeah, I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts on the subject, or should we move on?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I'll say finally is I'm super excited about what the MCU has to offer. I think that this break only serves to benefit them as a company because it does allow this like jammed in breather for MCU fans to like take a breath. But I also appreciate that switching over and watching a DC movie doesn't have to be the same thing either. It doesn't have to be good, doesn't have to be bad. It also doesn't have to feel like you're watching a comic book movie. Like, like Joker. I feel like Batman is going to be um kind of twisted in that way too, where you don't feel like you're watching a traditional comic book movie. And that's great. I definitely think that competition makes people
Yeah.
better. But yeah, DC, it's clear to me like DC didn't want to play the whole DC versus Marvel game anyway because there's probably too much sensitivity and heat there,
Well, I also think that
with
they
the whole rumors
understood what
about.
they had. They also knew that like where they
Yeah,
were was not where Marvel was, and that's fine.
yeah,
Like, and you can play the game by not playing the game, as you said. Like, be part of it, but
yeah.
kind of like we're gonna sit this one out, guys. Anyway, guys, what do you think? Do you have a differing thought or a differing opinion? Are you of the opinion that, hey, DC just dropped all of this news bomb stuff? Where's Marvel? Like, they need to be having a direct response to what DC is doing right now. Or are you more in alignment with like, whoa, 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 we need a little MCU break. Give us a minute. Pump the hate brakes, Thanos. Jump on down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys.